Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Real quick, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. If you're listening on podcasting platforms, give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. Man, Justin Jefferson just cashed out in a major way. Him and the Vikings have come to terms on a 4-year extension worth $140 million. $110 million of that is going to be fully guaranteed, make him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And on this episode, I'm going to be discussing how this new deal is going to impact the rest of the wide receiver market, plus the tough situation that Justin Jefferson has now put the Dallas Cowboys in. And Trevor Lawrence, he's currently at the negotiation table right now with Jacksonville. He's looking to get paid $50 million a year. Is he worth that kind of money? I got thoughts on it all. But before we dive into it, here's a quick word from our partner, Mint Mobile. Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JTsports in description and pinned comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint is easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JTsports in the description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today. Justin Jefferson is a very rich man. Him and the Vikings have agreed to terms on a 4-year extension worth $140 million. $110 million of that is going to be fully guaranteed. And he now becomes the NFL's highest paid non-quarterback in league history. Now, how is this going to impact the rest of the wide receiver market? Well, CeeDee Lamb, he's looking to get paid also, and he wants to get paid more than Justin Jefferson. And regardless of if you feel like CeeDee Lamb deserves to get paid more than Jay Jettas, you got to understand how the market works. If you're around the same tier as a guy like Justin Jefferson, then you're going to be able to demand to get more than him because all these guys are trying to outdo each other. All right. And with each deal that gets done, the wide receiver market gets reset. So Justin Jefferson is currently getting $35 million a year. CeeDee Lamb is probably going to look to get $36 million a year or somewhere around that, while Jamar Chase, who also is looking to get paid by Cincinnati, he's going to be in that same conversation to get around $35-36 million a year. But this doesn't only just impact those top tier guys. It also impacts those second tier of good number one wide receivers like Brandon Ayuk. Him and the 49ers are still trying to get a new deal done. And he's looking to get $29 million, $28 a year. But I think with Justin Jefferson getting this deal done, that's going to amp up how much he's going to be asking for, because now he has the right to ask for at least 30 plus a year. Now, is he going to command $35 million a year? Absolutely not. But I definitely can see a world where Brandon Ayuk is getting paid $30 million a year. It's really hard to find elite number one wide receivers. You can find you a good number two, number three option, but guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and CeeDee Lamb are very hard to find. And the thing that's so ironic about this is how Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb, they both are in line to get paid just as much as Justin Jefferson, and they're represented by the same agency. Isn't that crazy? And CeeDee Lamb is coming off a career year. He had 1,700 yards, 135 catches for 12 touchdowns. Even if you don't believe that CeeDee Lamb deserves to get paid more than Jay Jettas because he isn't better than him, with the way the market is set up, all these guys are going to end up topping each other. So we could see CeeDee Lamb get 36 and maybe Jamar Chase get 37 a year. It's ridiculous to pay that much for a wide receiver, but that's just the way these wide receivers are now starting to be valued, because a decade ago, wide receivers weren't viewed as highly as what they are now, because it's a way different league in 2024 as compared to 2014. You see, it's a passing league for a reason. These quarterbacks are getting astronomical contracts, and you can only expect the same to happen with these wide receivers. The market for QBs and wide receivers are heavily inflated because the NFL has now become more pass-centric. It's more easier to throw the football than it's ever been, with the fact that these cornerbacks pretty much can't touch these wide receivers at all, and you can't hit the quarterback pretty much. So it makes it more easier to throw the football. So, of course, guys like Jamar and CeeDee Lamb are going to be able to benefit from this. And you are going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase their asking price. If you're Cincy, you may look at Jamar and be like, yeah, fool, you're good, but you're not Jay Jettis. But since he's in that same tier, you can't deny him that money, because here's the thing. You can play a hardball with CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase all you want to, but if you're not going to pay him, I guarantee somebody else is. And that's the problem that I think a lot of fans fail to realize with these wide receiver contracts. You look at it and you say, man, our team can't afford to pay this dude that, or he's not better than Justin Jefferson, so it doesn't make no sense to pay him that. Yeah, you wouldn't pay him that, but there are tons of other teams that have no problem making Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb the highest paid receiver in the game. That's just the way that these markets are set up. It's the same thing with the quarterback market. These guys, anytime they're next in line, their next setup is to get paid more than the previous guy. Justin Jefferson just reset the wide receiver market in a major way. And there's been tons of guys who've gotten new deals. You had Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's getting paid $30 million a year. You got A.J. Brown, who before Justin Jefferson, he was the highest paid receiver at $32 million. And Tyreek Hill, years ago when he first got traded to Miami, he agreed to a $30 million a year's contract. So the wide receiver market right now is really ridiculous. It's really inflated, but it's really hard to find a true number one wide receiver. Your number one is expected to beat press coverage. He has to be able to create a lot of separation, and that's what makes these guys so valuable in the pass-heavy NFL. There's the old narrative that you don't need an elite wide receiver to win in the NFL anymore, and that's now starting to become a little outdated, because in the next 3-4 years, there are going to be Super Bowl winning teams that are going to have elite number ones on their roster. It's easy to replace a number 2 or a number 3 in the draft, but you don't find a Jamar Chase, a CD, or Justin Jefferson on the tree every day. These are superstar level wide receivers, Hall of Fame caliber guys eventually that they're going to become, and you just don't find these guys every day, so you have to pay them what they're worth. And if you were to trade one of these dudes, they will command a lot of value in the trade market. You could possibly flip one of these dudes for 2-3 first-round picks. They could get the same value right now as what a quarterback used to get back in the day when you traded away a guy like Russell Wilson. That's how crazy it is right now when it comes to paying these wide receivers. But with the NFL now favoring the passing game, that's why these wide receivers are getting paid these huge numbers, and you got to pay them. And with Cincinnati, you're in a tough spot, because you're going to have to pay Jamar Chase, but T. Higgins is going to have to get his walking papers right now, and he's really upset. He still hasn't signed his franchise tag yet, and that's around like 20-something million a year, and he's not happy with that. He wants to get 25, 28 million a year, and he definitely is worth that money. But this also is going to make guys like Brandon Ayuk get paid a little bit more also. So with the way the wide receiver market is going, we're only a few years away from guys getting paid $40 million a year. I wonder who that's going to become. Now, with Justin Jefferson signing this historic deal, becoming the highest paid non-quarterback in league history, he's put the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones in a very tough situation, because they now are going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb a record-breaking contract and Dak Prescott. And you also have to pay Michael Parsons. You're not going to be able to pay all three of those guys and still be able to field a championship caliber team. At least one of these dudes is going to have to get their walking papers, in my opinion. The question is, who is that going to be? Because right now, the Cowboys are working on the clock to get CeeDee Lamb locked up long term. And they messed up with this whole entire situation because they could have got Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb locked up long term before last season started, but they chose to drag their feet. And with them dragging their feet and Dak and CD balling out, they now are commanding a lot more than what they were worth before last season kicked off. Justin Jefferson, he's getting 35 a year. CeeDee Lamb, I could see him getting 36 million a year. And it doesn't matter if CeeDee Lamb is better than Justin Jefferson or not. You have to pay these dudes based off their production. And what we saw CeeDee Lamb do last year, first team All-Pro, 135 catches, over 1,700 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. Even if he isn't better than Jay Jettis, he's still in the same tier as him. So therefore, he's going to have the right to command to get more than him. That's just the way that these markets go, as I elaborated in my previous segment. And it's the same thing with the quarterback market. We just saw Jared Goff get $50 million a year. Tua's probably going to get that, and Trevor Lawrence might get that as well. So Dak Prescott, that opens up the can of worms for him to get 55, 60 million a year and become the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. And when you're dishing out this kind of money, especially when you still have Michael Parsons, who has his hand out right now, looking for a new contract, you only have so much money to give out for the rest of your team to fill the competitive roster, because Dallas is going to find themselves in a spot where, are you really going to be willing to invest the majority of your cap space into only 3 guys and become a top-heavy team and don't have any depth behind them? Think about all of the good depth pieces that the Cowboys just lost in free agency a few months ago to the Washington Commanders. There's more to winning Super Bowls than just having 3-star players. You got to have a complete, well-rounded team. What about the offensive line? You know, you just lost Tyron Smith. Jerry Jones at the start of this offseason said that the Cowboys were going to go all in. And what he meant by that was, we're going to go all in on paying our top 3 core guys. CeeDee Lamb, he's been waiting for Justin Jefferson to get paid for the last couple of months so he can not do them. Now, I wouldn't pay CeeDee Lamb that much. Hell, if I'm Dallas, I trade him, try to get 2-3 first-round picks, but they're not going to do that. But Dak Prescott, though, I would be willing to let him walk and hit free agency. The reason for this is because he's 30 years old, and he's been in the league for a while, and he hasn't produced a lot of postseason success. I'd rather pay Michael Parsons and CeeDee Lamb and like Dak Prescott walk and try to reset with maybe Shedeur Sanders in next year's draft, because Dion already said that he has no problem, him and Shedeur, pulling a Eli and trying to force themselves into the situation that they want to be in, which I think ideally would be Dallas. And this doesn't have anything to do with Dion potentially becoming the next head coach of the Cowboys, which I strongly doubt that'll happen. But if Shedeur wants to become a Dallas Cowboy, I'm pretty sure they can find a way to make that happen. When you have Shedeur Sanders on a rookie deal, that's going to allow you to pay a lot of money to CD and Michael Parsons and still have a little bit of wiggle room to fill the competitive roster. But if you're investing 55 to 60 million a year in Dak Prescott, and you're giving CeeDee Lamb 35, 36 million a year, and God knows how much Michael Parsons is gonna get paid, what happens to DeRon Bland? You know, like, what happens to all of the other young pieces on your team that are going to look to get new contracts? You aren't going to be able to keep everybody around, and that means that your team is going to get significantly worse. Jerry Jones is in a really tough situation thanks to Justin Jefferson, and it's the Dallas Cowboys' fault why they find themselves in this spot, because they waited too long with this. If you knew that you wanted to extend Dak, you should have just gone ahead and done it before last year started. We know that Dak Prescott is always going to give you top 10 quarterback play during the regular season. And I still believe there's a possibility he could win you a Super Bowl if you get the right coach in there. But you got to have CeeDee Lamb around him, because Dak Prescott is one of those QBs that he's only as good as the pieces that he has around him, which is why I think it would be a smart idea just to let him walk. When you have somebody who doesn't really elevate the team, per se, and you need to pay a guy like CeeDee Lamb, I'm not willing to make Dak Prescott a higher paid quarterback than guys like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow, guys who have proven to be able to do more with less and be able to win in the playoffs. Dak Prescott hasn't had the playoff win since they beat Grandpa Brady a few years ago. That was his best playoff performance in recent years. Ever since then, he just has been a no-show in the postseason. And I'm not willing to invest in that when we've already seen the track record. Yeah, he puts up great stats in the regular season. He was an MVP finalist last year, but where did that get Dallas? Losing to Jordan Love? Yeah, I think if I'm Jerry Jones and I can't keep all three of my core guys, I would be willing to let Dak Prescott walk, get $60 million somewhere else, because there definitely are teams that would pay him $60 million a year. But Dallas, it wouldn't be in their best interest to do that, just because your roster is going to be severely depleted with you giving away like 30% of your cap space, maybe more than that, to three dudes on your team. Football is a game that is a team sport, and you got to have 11 guys on the field that can do their job at a high level. And with you investing the majority of your cap space into three of those dudes, it just doesn't seem like a viable option if you're still trying to be a contender, unless you really trust your ability to draft and develop, which the Dallas Cowboys have been kind of in the middle of that when it comes to drafting well and having those draft picks turn into really good players. So Jay Jettis, with this historic contract that he has just agreed to terms with the Minnesota Vikings, 4 years, $140 million, $110 million, fully guaranteed. You know, things don't get any easier for Jerry Jones and America's team right now, because I think one of their three core guys are going to have to walk. I'd be really surprised if they keep all three, because it just wouldn't be smart if they are still trying to be a Super Bowl contender for the foreseeable future. Because, I mean, giving up this much cap space to just three guys, plus you just paid Trayvon Diggs, I don't think that's smart. You got to invest that kind of money in other positions. You got to be able to spread the money out. And yes, the cap space does go up every single year, but it's not going to go up that much where you're going to have just so much leeway when it comes to free agency to still be able to sign guys that can have a big impact in terms of you being able to get back to a Super Bowl, a place that you haven't been since the damn 90s. Mr. Sunshine, Trevor Lawrence, is currently at the negotiation table with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's looking to get paid like an elite quarterback. He's seeking $50 million a year, and this has been a big debate amongst many people in the national media. Is Trevor Lawrence worth elite quarterback money? Me personally, I say pay to do what he's asking for. Here's the thing. Right now, $50 million a year seems like a lot of money to invest in a guy like Trevor Lawrence that still hasn't proven that he's that guy. But here's the thing. You're risking having to pay him more if he balls out next season than what you would if you just go ahead and you pay him right now. And it would be in Jacksonville's best interest to lock Trevor up long term before this season starts, because he's not going to be anything worse than the top 13, top 12 quarterback. And I think Trevor Lawrence last season, he was really good for the first half until the second half he fell apart due to injuries. But when he's fully healthy, he's still one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League. And a lot of people look at $50 million a year as top-end quarterback money. But the way that the salary cap is going up every year, by 2026, 2027, you'll be looking at Trevor Lawrence deal as a huge steal, because there's going to be guys like Dak Prescott that are going to be making $60 million a year. And if you're Jacksonville, are you really willing to take that kind of gamble? But at the same time, are you willing to gamble and give Trevor Lawrence $50 million and he doesn't play up to expectations this year? See, Trevor Lawrence has done more in Jacksonville in the last couple of years than what the Jaguars have done in the last couple of decades. You know, outside of when they went to the AFC Championship with Blake Bortles, this franchise has been one of the biggest laughingstocks in the National Football League. And even when they had that 2017 Cinderella run, the reason they lost that game was because they had Blake Bortles, and the reason why that great defense and that whole entire team fell apart was because they made the wrong decision to extend Blake Bortles because he wasn't that good. He was just decent enough to benefit off having a decent supporting cast, a good system that fitted his skill set, and a fantastic defense that was able to carry the bulk load of that team. But when Blake Bortles was asked to step up and look like a franchise quarterback, he wasn't able to pass the test. And when you had Gardner Minshew, who a lot of people are quick to bring up how Gardner Minshew in his first couple of years has the same or similar stats to Trevor Lawrence, yeah, the numbers look really similar, but the performance isn't. When Trevor Lawrence is at his best, he washes Gardner Minshew. It's not even a discussion. It's like a super heavyweight versus a bantamweight when you compare Trevor and Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew had empty stats. Because you want to know why? He didn't lead the Jaguars to any AFC division titles, and he didn't lead them to a playoff win. And let's not try to disqualify Trevor Lawrence's playoff win just because he threw a bunch of interceptions in the first half. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And I watched Andrew Luck plenty of times throughout his career have a lot of turnovers, but that still didn't stop the coach from paying him. That still didn't stop people from claiming him to be the next quarterback that was up to take the mantle, because before we had Patrick Mahomes, people were anointing Andrew Luck to be the next big thing. And he was a turnover machine at times. I'm not worried about Trevor Lawrence's ability to play at a high level. We know what Trevor Lawrence is able to do when he stays healthy. And before Trevor Lawrence arrived at Jacksonville, for as decent as what Gardner Minshew looked on the stat sheet, he wasn't getting nobody in the seats. When Trevor Lawrence arrived in Jacksonville after his rookie season, when they got rid of Urban Meyer and they got in a true coach in Doug Peterson, Jacksonville has played in more primetime games and they've been talked about more amongst the national media than what they've ever been. Trevor Lawrence is the most talented quarterback that this franchise has ever had. And I don't recall as many people going to Jacksonville games as what they are now with T-Law at the helm at QB than what they were in the past. And I've lived in this city for about 12 to 13 years. It wasn't buzzing like that when it came to football until Trevor became the quarterback. You can't deny the impact that he's had on getting people to come to these games and the fact that Jacksonville is now in the spotlight. The only reason people talk about Jacksonville is because who's at quarterback. So he's selling merchandise, he's bringing publicity. I think all that has to come into the contract negotiations if you're Trevor Lawrence and you're his agent. Because before he got here, bruh, you rarely heard anybody talking about Jacksonville. Even that Cinderella run they had, nobody was really talking about them until near playoff time. Trevor Lawrence, I get that he's really inconsistent, but he still has tons of rooms to develop. But I think he's proven enough that if Tua's going to get $50 million a year and he hasn't had a decent playoff game in his career yet, I don't see why you couldn't give Trevor Lawrence that same contract. I look at Jared Goff. Yes, he's really good, but is he the beneficiary from having a great supporting cast and a great offensive coordinator? Because if you put Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff's situation with Ben Johnson, the best offensive coordinator in the game, a top 3 offensive line, and great receivers, I could see him putting up way better numbers than what Jared Goff does. The only thing that hindered Trevor Lawrence in 2023 was injuries, because people seem to forget that the second time the Jaguars and the Texans played, because everybody likes to anoint CJ Stroud and the Texans as, locks to win the AFC South, they smashed them by a pretty considerable margin. Trevor Lawrence has all the physical tools and all the traits to be one of the best in the game. Right now, he's still a top 12, top-ish quarterback. Hell, I'll take Trevor Lawrence over Tua. What has Tua showed to command $50 million a year? I think the Jaguars investing in Trevor Lawrence is a way safer risk than Miami investing in Tua Tagovailoa. And it doesn't matter about if you feel they deserve to get paid this. That's just what the QB market is. All these guys are in line to get $50 million a year because that's the bare minimum for having an above average quarterback. Kirk Cousins, people try to say is better than Trevor Lawrence. He hasn't won a playoff game. This is the same dude that got outplayed by Daniel effing Jones a few years ago. Have we forgotten that? Trevor Lawrence has showed the ability to rise to the occasion in primetime games and in the playoffs. Nobody talks about what happened during the second half of last season, him trying to play through injuries, which he probably was better off just sitting out 2 games and trying to heal up so he can be at 85% for the last couple of weeks. But instead, he tried to play through it, and he just got worse. He just looked discombobulated. You know, Trevor Lawrence is Jacksonville right now. There's nothing to do in the city but go to the Jaguar games and support this team. You can't go to Landon because everybody was always getting shot up every single week it was open, which is why they closed that thing down. And outside of going to Jazz games, the only thing that you can do in Jacksonville downtown is ride the damn scooters. So I say keep Trevor Lawrence, because are you willing to wait another decade to find another franchise quarterback that's good enough to live up to the talent that Trevor Lawrence is? There are plenty of teams that I could see Trevor Lawrence going to that would thrive right now, paying him $50 million a year. Hell, you put him on the Miami Dolphins, I think they're a Super Bowl contender with him. That's how good of a talent Trevor Lawrence is, and you just don't try to nitpick when you get your franchise guy. People keep saying Trevor Lawrence hasn't shown enough. What do you mean he hasn't shown enough? The dude's won a playoff game. He's led Jacksonville to back-to-back winning seasons. This franchise has only had, 10, 11 winning seasons? And Trevor Lawrence has been a part of them. At least 2 out of 11 of them. We haven't had a quarterback this good since freaking Mark Brunell. Don't say David Garrard, because he was all right, but he wasn't Trevor Lawrence, and even he'll tell you that. And please don't say Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles was a stat sheet stuffer. I remember that one season, Blake Bortles had 40 touchdowns, and he was throwing them to Allen Robinson. You know, they were empty stats because most of those touchdowns came in the fourth quarter when Jacksonville was trailing. You don't gamble and try to roll the dice and say, you know what? We're not going to pay you. We're just going to let you walk elsewhere, and we're going to draft your replacement. Like, that's a foolish decision. I've seen some people on the net compare Trevor Lawrence to Daniel Jones. Like, don't disrespect T-Law like that. Trevor Lawrence is nowhere close to Daniel Jones. We knew that Daniel Jones contract was a bad decision from the moment it first came out that they agreed to extension with him, because nobody else was going to pay Daniel Jones that kind of money in free agency. But if Trevor Lawrence was a free agent right now, I guarantee there are plenty of teams that would be lined up to pay him $50 million a year and then some. Has he lived up to the hype of being a number 1 overall pick? No, but that doesn't mean he never will. But he still has shown enough that he deserves to get paid like a above average good quarterback. Because that's the going rate when you're looking for a decent quarterback in the league. It's at least $50 million a year. Now, if you want to roll the dice and say, you know what, we're going to make you show us this season, it's like, we got confidence in you that you're the guy, but we just need a little bit more out of you this season so we can make sure that we're not making a mistake. I don't think Trevor Lawrence play is going to fall off a cliff and you get Daniel Jones from 2023. At worst, you get the same Trevor Lawrence that you saw last year, which is still good enough to give him $48-50 million a year, because a healthy Trevor Lawrence, to me, probably puts up 28 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and he probably chips in with 6 on the ground. So that's 30 plus touchdowns, which still would be above average good quarterback play. Still would mean he would be in line to get $50 million a year. Y'all keep looking at things relative to right now, but y'all not looking at things relative from the next 3 to 4 years down the road. 3 to 4 years down the road, there's going to be quarterbacks like CJ Stroud that may be getting 65, damn near $70 million a year. Trevor Lawrence, will he be on the same level as CJ Stroud by that time? You will hope so, but if not, $50 million a year will be a pretty good bargain. Baker Mayfield getting $35 million a year, you shouldn't compare that to Trevor Lawrence, because Baker Mayfield has had an up and down career. The dude was cast aside by the Cleveland Browns. He goes to Carolina, doesn't do anything, does decent with the Rams, and then he comes to Tampa Bay and resurrects his career, but that's just one off season. when you look at Trevor Lawrence, I think that over the last 2 years, his body of work holds up a little bit better than Baker Mayfield because he's just a more talented player. And when Trevor Lawrence is healthy and he's playing at his best, you get way better quarterback play than what you would get out of a guy like Geno Smith or Baker Mayfield. It's a quarterback-driven league. You need a good quarterback to win. I wouldn't have a problem giving Tua $50 million a year because I'm just thinking about what the quarterback market is going to look like in 4 years from now. And that's not what I hear too many people talking about. They keep talking about what about right now. It's not about right now. It's about trying to get ahead of the curve. That's why a lot of these teams don't wait until the end of these guys' fifth-year options to get them extended, because then you run the risk of having to pay them more when you could just go ahead, lock them up going into their fourth or third year, and you don't have to worry about that, because even if, they end up balling out and outplaying their new contract, they're not going to come at you and be like, hey, we need to re-up on the new deal because you just got paid, fool. We just gave you $50 million a year. Like, Lamar Jackson could easily go to the Baltimore Ravens and say, hey, I need more money, but he can't do that because he just got paid last offseason. So, Trevor Lawrence, he deserves every bit of the money that he's asking for. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed, leave a 5-star review. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel. You can find this episode and all of our previous ones in audio format on Apple and Spotify. Wherever you get your podcasts from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. Follow us on X at JT Sports __ and on Instagram at JT Sports _. We got a lot of extra content on there. I just hired a guy to create social media content for me. I made a post last night saying how I wasn't going to be as active on social media as what I have been on the past, just because, I got to take a break off social media for my mental health. And I think a lot of people got the wording with that post a little bit wrong, because a lot of people aren't following. I guess people thought by me posting that or making that statement that I wasn't going to be posting on the page anymore and I was going to have somebody else taking over. But when I met this, I'm just paying somebody to make content for me, and eventually I will come back. It's just right now, with the way I'm feeling mentally, I just can't be on social media like that. Like, I really got to take a break and get my mind right. I just got to go ghost from the world. But if you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.